In the last movie, we saw a variety of ways to create and delete nodes. In this movie, we're going to look at how to connect and disconnect them. To do that, we'll load a script. We'll go up to the Load button, our pop-up menu, come down to Exercise Files, double-click on Chapter 3, and double-click on ShakeScript02. And it loads a bunch of disconnected nodes, which we are going to connect. Watch what happens when I put the cursor on this node. The node lights up with all this additional information. On the left is the familiar Viewer button, which puts it in the Viewer. On the right is the Parameter button, which puts it into the Parameters tab. On the top, this is the Input knot. This is where the connection is made to the input side of the node. And the bottom is the Output knot. This is where the connection would be made from this node out to others. This little guy over here is where the mat's connected. We'll talk about him later after we've learned more about mats. To connect the Marcy node to the Brightness node, simply come up to the Output knot, click and drag and release on the Input knot. Done. Another way to connect them is we could select the Brightness node, come down to the Blur's Input knot, and do a Shift click. That's a whole other way to connect them. That's very helpful when you're working with large node trees and your two nodes are very far apart. Some nodes have multiple inputs, taking more than one input. The overnode, for example, has two input knots. The way to tell which is which can be found down here at the bottom of the screen at the contextual help message. This window prints a help message every time the cursor lays over something that's sensitive to it. For example, if I go to the left knot on the overnode, the contextual help says that this is the overnode and that's the foreground connection knot. The other one says this is the overnode and that's the background connection knot. Now there's two classes of contextual help. One is where it identifies what the object is. The other type of help is it'll tell you what will happen if you click on it. We'll come down to the Pixel Analyzer tab and the contextual help says it's going to switch to the Pixel Analyzer window if I click on that. So let's go back to the overnode because we want to connect the Jet Fighter foreground and the Cloud Flyby background and make a composite. So I'll come up to the Jet node, click and drag, let go. Now on the background, I'm going to select it, come down to the overnode and just shift click, and we've created the composite. The other thing to realize is that although there's only one output to a node, it can go to many different inputs. Let's take a look down here. We'll select Marcy, come to this node, and do a shift click here, a shift click there, and a shift click there. So even though Marcy has one output, it can go to any number of inputs you want. As there are many ways to connect nodes, there are many ways to disconnect them. Notice as I lay the cursor on the noodle, it lights up red. If I go to the output edge, it turns yellow. So when the noodle lights up, that means it can be disconnected. And it's disconnected by hitting the delete key, the one near the home key, the same one that deletes the nodes. So light it up, delete. Light it up, delete. There's another way that you can extract a node. We'll come up and select the Brightness node, and then I'll hit the E for extract. It's no longer connected. In fact, if I had 10 nodes selected, the E button would have extracted all 10 of them. If I want to insert him, I can put him back, and as soon as everybody lights up yellow, and this is a very narrow window, you got to get it exactly right, you let go, and he's reconnected. Another way to extract a noodle is to shake it loose. Jiggle, 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 and it's disconnected. Another important connection and disconnection feature is the swap noodle capability. I'm going to pick up this noodle, drop it over here, and bang, the two inputs swapped. Of course, that makes the composite wrong, so we've got to put it back. So I'll click, drag, and drop. This is particularly handy when you're connecting foreground and background layers and you often get it wrong. It's real easy to just swap them. One more disconnect feature is the bump the node trick. I can click and drag and bring this node down here and replace the background layer with Marcy, and it just bumps off the old one. Of course, we want to put it back, so I'll click, drag, and bump off the Marcy background. Sometimes you have a group of nodes that you would like to duplicate somewhere else. You can do a copy and paste of entire blocks of nodes. For example, We could do a Control-C to copy these, then a Control-V to paste them. Then they can be moved anywhere they want. Since we don't really want to keep these, and they're all selected, I can get rid of them just by hitting the Delete key. Another way to copy a node is to make a clone of it. This is very cool. I'm going to insert the brightness node back in. Okay, now it's reinserted. Now I'm going to make a copy, Control-C, but when I paste it, I'm going to do Control-Shift-V. Now look what I have. I've got a brightness 1 clone. This node is a clone of the original brightness node. That means they're connected. We can see the connection with the enhanced node view. So whenever I adjust this brightness node, the clone is going to follow. We'll turn off the enhanced view. I'll connect this to the composite. Now this brightness node will be adjusting the brightness of the composite. I'm going to demonstrate that for you by putting Marcy's brightness node in the viewer, and then using Control-T, open up a tweaker for Marcy's brightness. So as I adjust Marcy's brightness node, you can see Marcy's getting brighter and darker. Now I'll put the brightness node for the composite in there. And I'm going to adjust Marcy's brightness, and the composite is also getting brighter and darker. But be careful. You must never touch the adjustment inside of a cloned node. If you do, that permanently breaks the connection and it's no longer a clone. In this movie, we saw a variety of techniques for connecting and disconnecting nodes, including how to extract them out of the flow graph without deleting them, and reinsert them back in. We also saw how to swap inputs to a node and even bump the noodle off and bump it back on. We also saw the very important process of creating a cloned node, and we will always remember not to touch the adjustment in the clone, otherwise we'll break it.